But I guess what I'm curious about then, if we have all of these different like levers and pulleys and all these different gears that we can shift back and forth between, and this complex recipe with all these different ratios and everything else, how do we develop that self-awareness? How do we begin to like recognize when we are trading our language or moving back and forth between these different types of voices?
So the best thing we can do is train our ears, right? No one can be as much of an expert on our voice as we can be on our own voice. And if we sound learning is very interesting because some people, it depends, but some people can just hear a sound and then without knowing any of the mechanisms, be able to produce that same sound themselves. And even if you need a more breakdown, move things in this way type of approach, you still can learn to hear the sound changes in your own voice and complete the same movements to have those sounds come again. It's sound is just so amazing, and we can become aware of our own sound and shift it.
So it's about a willingness, I suppose, to listen to ourselves and to like really pay attention to what's going on.
Yeah, I mean, technically, some people who have voice dysphoria don't like to listen to their own voice while they practice.
Sure.
So you can use earplugs and you can walk the sound and work on feeling. And there's exercises you can do initially that don't have any sound to them. But yeah, ultimately, voice is sound, and listening to the sound is how we start to learn what it is that we're doing in the process of working towards shifting it.
So, I mean, you mentioned some different exercises. I mean, obviously, working with a professional like yourself, what does the process look like to optimize all of these things and to maybe take more control over the way people hear us?
Yeah, so I think that it's really important to find someone to work with who's able to change their own voice gender presentation, because that's such a big part of having an effective and efficient voice gender presentation shift, is working with people who can do that. I think another piece that's really important for optimizing is having a community. There's been some research that's done that have shown when you compare people who do both individual voice training and work with groups, that they make more progress than people who only do individual voice training alone. In that spirit, I started a community on Facebook where people can come and work on their voice. We have a free monthly meetup where people from all over the world come and we learn and practice our voices together. And I really can see the people who have that community start to feel like it's not just me, other people are doing the work too, and there's hope.
Well, and I don't want to be too fake deep about it, but I mean, that feels like everything that we're talking about here, right? Like the importance of being able to take up space and to have a voice and to participate in a community. I mean, we're talking largely about people who may feel uncomfortable speaking up for themselves or who might feel uncomfortable sharing their voice with others. So creating a safe space to do that. I mean, again, I'd like to believe that we are working on creating a safe world for everybody to have a voice that is heard. But I also don't want to be Pollyannish about it. The community that you're creating on Facebook feels incredibly vital. Are there other examples that you might be able to give us of people kind of coming together and circling the wagons in these ways to create a safe space?
Yeah, I think a lot of people come together, and I think that you don't have to be part of a big community in order to find supportive people. I think a lot of people I've worked with have liked just taking their voice. They're not comfortable yet using it with someone else, send someone else a voice recording and get feedback that way. If you have people who you know who are supportive, even if they're not working on their own voice, then you can get their feedback. It's important to find people who are supportive and community. There's so many different places to connect, but I think finding other like-minded people is super important in this process.
Mm-hmm. Well, I know that I have been on something of a personal journey myself this past year, looking to become a little bit more radically accepting, a little bit more self-aware, and to just be more mindful of the way that I speak and the way that I present myself to others. And, I can definitely tell you that I have had relationships end and potentially jobs threatened and these different kinds of things because of a lack of that sort of self-awareness. What does it look like for people when these types of techniques or when this type of awareness is missing?
So I think that if you can't control the sound of your voice, then you are at the mercy of whatever it is that you're most used to doing, which might be lovely. But if it's not, then just sort of becoming aware that there's change that is possible is good. I know I have a friend who, well, she also worked in the nursing home, but Kara, who's absolutely lovely, and she always sounds like she is a preschool teacher, right? And everyone loves listening to her, but that same voice that's absolutely wonderful isn't always the best when you need someone to do something for you, right? And so being able to shift and just sort of be playing with your voice, learning how you can change it really helps opens up a lot of possibilities there.
Hmm. Well, I know we've been kind of talking around this question, but what do you see as far as our ability to make a more compassionate world or to create like a safer, uh, just a safer place for everybody to be able to express themselves and to, use their voice without all of the judgments about the way that it's, quote, supposed to be or the way that people are supposed to sound?
I mean, if I had my choice, we would just stop gendering people all the time, right? Like Fiona called earlier and asked about misgendering. If people didn't say sure, she and her when we go to the fast food restaurant, then people wouldn't be getting misgendered, right? Like if we start, on our bank account, do we need to put Mrs. or Miss, or can we just put owner? If we
Hmm.
see opportunities in our life where we are having gendered language, we can be critical. Is this something that I need to know or is it not? In this, when I'm communicating, is maybe does it not matter what their gender is because I'm just serving them? And as we start to become more aware, I know there's the culture going on around it, but as we become more aware of gender, we can back up and only use gender language when it's relevant. Another thing that's really helpful for people to do is to use they. So it is grammatically correct to use they when you don't know someone's gender. And so if someone hasn't explicitly told you, there isn't a way to know what gender someone is. So we can just use they and until they tell us.
Living
Hmm.
in the South, just getting the sir and ma'am all the time. It's just, if I had a magic wand, I would get rid of those two words for sure.
Yeah, no, that's definitely fair to say. And it kind of raises the question. I know that this is maybe an unfair thing to ask, but do either of you feel like we're headed in the right direction here? Certainly trans identities are more visible. In particular, we're seeing a lot more cultural acceptance around NB folks. And it feels like people are becoming more literate and more open-minded about these things. And then I turn on the news and I start to feel like really disheartened. I know that there's not necessarily a way to quantify these things, but do either of you feel like we are headed towards a society that is any more like open, accepting, or even just aware of these types of things?
I think that we are, as in so many things, trying to drag the world into a better place. And I'm seeing progress. I mean, at my workplace, they've got all the apps now have like she, her, he, him, etc., like that, and they're encouraging more inclusive language, etc., etc. Good things are happening there. Um, but as you said, there's a lot of stuff going on, particularly in legislatures across the country and such, and in other countries, to try to put a halt to those things or to take things in a different direction entirely. So, it's like we're we're moving in the right direction, but at the same time, it's like we're dragging a heavy rock behind us that's occasionally pulling us backwards.
Yeah, no, I feel that. Sarah, you and I have been doing this show together for long enough to have seen, I think, a lot of success, but in ways that I can't necessarily quantify, and without any like real statistics or anything else, I can't help but admit feeling pretty goddamn tired a lot of the time.
Yeah. I'm tired a lot.
Fair to say. With that very, very cheery tone, it might be a good time for a segue. So, Sarah, why don't you take us back to the phones and see if there's anybody who might be able to brighten our mood?